So leading to our first clip, basically what it is, when we started working with Alex, he just got Ex Machina as a deal. He wrote this thing and it was being made, and he was like, right, you guys are on it. And we were like, cool, we're going to be on it as soon, like as soon as possible, so we can get in there to stop them using temp music, and they can use our music. Yeah. And so this leads to kind of Ava's thing, basically.
Yeah. So basically what happened, Alex phoned me up, he said, we've got our first screening for the execs next week. I was like, oh, that's soon. And we literally only just saw you yesterday to watch the first cut. And he said, no, and the film isn't going to be finished for a year and a bit. And he said, just get me something for Ava's theme, because this is the main theme for the film, and it's really important that we get this right. And I said, when do you want it? He said, in the next hour. And I said, we've got a. He said, just anything that stops us using temp music. Just have it, because I'd played him a bit of Celeste music I'd done the thing I did before Ex Machina was a thing for Beyonce, and we'd done a bit of sort of twinkly Celeste music, and I played him a bit of that, and he said, yeah, that's not right, but that's the world, because we want a fairy tale, we want something that's really, really simple. And he said, it has to be so simple that I'm sure you could just do it off the top of your head. It really doesn't want to be anything complicated at all, no edge to it, nothing at all. So honestly, it was, I know you hear these stories all the time, but I played it, sent it to Geoff, said, what do you think? He said, yeah, slow it down a bit. It took as long as you imagine playing this piece. I mean, we then produced it a little bit, and all it is a Celeste playing a very, very simple theme, and underneath it is a time-stretched version of itself that creates the bed. That's literally all it is, and that saved our bacon for Ex Machina, really, because it did work. As soon as I sent it to Alex, he was like, yeah, that's it. Which it definitely isn't always the way with Alex at all, but on this occasion it was. And it was wedded to the film. It was used 3 or 4 times in the film. It's used at the end, and it breaks down.
Also, what it did is, because we have written this really harsh music for Dread, and I think that it was also a test to basically say, can you actually write nice music as well?
Yeah.
Can you because if you can't, then we've got a problem, because Ex Machina is going to have light bits, soft bits. It's a love story as well.
It's very, very important that this cue has no edge, because you're playing as the composers on this film. What we were doing is we were part of the. Have any of you seen Ex Machina as a film? Oh, well, there's most of you. So as you'll know, it won't be a spoiler, that Ava's theme is part of the subterfuge, if that's the way of saying that word. We, as an audience, have to be entranced by her, enchanted by her, in the same way as Caleb is. And so it's a sort of fairy tale. It's a naive sort of lullaby. It has to be.
Should we show it?
Yeah, let's show it. And the one other thing to listen out for, because we'll talk about it, is the sound in it. Where is their sound design, and where is their music? So.
Okay.
Now open your eyes.
That basically secured us kind of having the job.
Yeah. That and the fact we could then, I don't know if you remember the end of the film, that theme comes back again and it sort of breaks down and becomes, we did that as well on the weekend. So we sent those two bits within our first week of working on the film. We had those in the bag, and then we had a year and whatever of hell, and everything else falling apart and the way it does with an Alex Garland film. But it secured our role. So I suppose the lesson is if you get the chance and someone says, I need this by the end of the day, just give it a go. I mean, when I sent that to Alex, I was like, is that really? Honestly, is that all you want? And he was like, no, that's it. And so bedded us in.
There's definitely a feeling, I think that people think you've got, right, so your working time you're being paid for starts here and stops there. And you really, that's just not the case.
No.
As soon as you hear of something, as soon as you get the opportunity to write for something, you need to do it. Because it's a collaboration. You need to secure yourself.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's happened a couple of times recently for me, and it's a weird feeling. It's kind of like work with someone who felt like they could wait until the last minute to produce stuff, and I've tried to hint, look, I could really do with some stuff here, and it's made it kind of more difficult for me, and it it makes me think, well, they didn't get the hint, I'm not going to work with them again. Like pretty much every film that we've made, we've spent months and months and months. We've always had this thing like in the industry that you work on a project and it's supposed to be like 3 months.
Yeah.
I don't know where this 3 months ever came from.
It never is for us.
But I mean, the shortest time that we spent on something is like 8 months.
Yeah, sometimes
5 months.
Yeah, and it's sort of I suppose from that very first film we did with Alex Garland, it's set in stone for us. Maybe there are other ways of working, but definitely with me, Geoff, and Alex, it's set in stone, a precedent of this is how we work.
Yeah.
We get there are
Well, it was like that with Ben Wheatley as well.
It was
wasn't
like that, yeah.
And it's been.
And it works for us in that you can get into a film early on and you can take time getting your palette and your voice in the film right. And I think the other added bonus of that is creatively, you feel like you're an essential cog in the film. You're not just this thing that's brought on at the end to decorate it and make it look pretty. You are, and that has its pros and cons. Me and Geoff and Alex, fallen out. We've argued. We way overstep our mark in terms of, well, you could cut that a bit differently there, and telling a filmmaker, but he likes that. He allows us to, and things can happen that are a real pain in the ass. The Ex Machina was a good point. Yeah, case in point, we wrote there's Ava's theme. One of the other themes that runs through it was a sort of oscillating guitar thing that was sort of more about Caleb's infatuation with sort of romantic infatuation with the robot, with Ava, and we'd written it all the way through the film. It peaks at a certain point where he dreams about actually getting it on with her, and the first time we see it is when he sees her on CCTV, and you hear this thing. And we're about 8 months into the film. We watch a cut of the film, full cut, fully scored, and Alex goes, "No, it doesn't make sense that he falls in love with her that quickly. It just doesn't. He's not. if you saw a robot, you might fall in love with her eventually, but you'd be sort of weirded out by it as well. And there just wasn't enough of that, and there wasn't enough in it. He didn't have any stuff in the performances to change it. The only thing he had at his disposal really was recutting it slightly, but the music. And so that whole pack of cards that it just tumbled around us. We had to make the first version of that cue a bit weirder, which made the second one, you had to, and it had been carefully structured, and it all fell apart. But, that's a good thing. It's like you go, oh, no, what a nightmare. We've got to redo that whole thing. We've been doing this for 8 months. Do we really have to start again? But we sort of did on that thread. But that's, that means you're involved and you're invested and you're part of this amazing thing.
If you're talking about the minutiae of production as well, and other people can see that and they can hear it and read it to picture, you're onto a good thing, because you know that you're at a level. It's like, it's micro changes, and it's like the worst thing is when you don't want to, you don't really want to change anything up too much, but the person you're dealing with wants massive kind of changes. Well, you write, I mean, you spend ages on a tune or whatever, and you've worked on a beat or whatever, and then they go, and you're completely sold on this, and then they go, how about, like, why don't you get real drums on it? And you go, why would I want to do that? That would be awful. But you kind of have to go, it might work. Because there aren't any other real drums on the whole of the score, or the whole of the record, or the whole of the whatever. But for some reason, it's like someone's had some idea, and then they want to go with it.
So, lessons in management of how to deal with collaborative situations.
Also, let's say about that as well, the pulse that you hear that goes underneath is sound design. It's not music. And a lot of the scores that we write, I think sound designers must hate us, because we kind of do a half score, half sound design thing, and so that was. We had done the score for the whole film and not heard any sound design for Ex Machina. No. And then all of a sudden we were sat there, and they, up comes the sound design, and the sound designer is, what's his name?
Glenn. Glenn Fremantle. He's won an Oscar and is amazing.
He did Gravity. I mean, it's like, you talk about top people here. But we heard it, and it was like, oh no, this is awful. Like, because it had robot noises, like bubbling liquid, and like bloop, bloop, bloop,
and it's still in there.
It's still in there, but it starts disappearing through the film. I think it's just like, so Alex had the idea that he wanted to have all these whirring kind of noises and everything else. But the trouble is that luckily enough, that pulse kind of is in tune with our score.
Well, luckily we wrote everything in the same key.
Yeah.
In our naivety.
Yeah.
So it worked.
But if you don't work with your sound designer, you could, I mean, they could be putting pulses in completely different keys, in different...
It was a massive lesson to us in that having crafted and worked, and, this is where the silence is. I mean, the Ex Machina score is all about sort of temperature of how tense you're making things, how, you're manipulating people. It's a very minimal score. There's not a massive amount to it. And so we were focusing in on the tiniest thing. And does that little tiny drone there, does that make you think she's being manipulative, or does it make, all of those things, really subtle things. And then we get in there and there's this boom, 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 all the way through it. Like, what was the point in spending all that? And the loudest noise in the film was someone shutting a door.
Yeah, well, we went to the mix, right? We went to the mix. The first time I've ever been to the John Barry suite at
Pinewood.
Pinewood, you know what I mean? It's a massive, like one of these, but huge, with these huge screen and proper Star Trek control room, right? And basically, like, we're like, oh no, do we? I mean, we're working with Alex, so we feel we've got that openness that we can say we don't think that's right, or we don't think that's right, and that's the mix in general. It's like all the film in general. You can say what you want, And so the music starts, and it's like with a helicopter. He's basically, he gets the email in the office, and all that stuff happens, and there's a bit of synth stuff going on, and then he gets on the helicopter, and then he goes off, and it's just like, wow, this is really exciting, on the massive screen.
Yeah.
And he lands, and then he's walking through. His phone doesn't work, and he goes and he walks up to this door, and he walks up to this door, and you've had music and everything else, and it's feeling fine. And then, like, the door opens, and it takes a photograph of him, gives him a card. He puts it in the door, and the door shuts, and it goes, and it's the loudest thing in the film yet.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Why is the door like? The door is. At this rate, that door closing is going to be louder than when Caleb's cutting his arm off, chopping a razor into his arm. You know what I mean? The most kind of harrowing part of the film, and that door close is so it's like this fighting thing you have to do all the time. And sound designers usually work very close with the mixers, so they're their best mates.
Yeah.
So it's like, and the score.
So anyway, talk to each other.
Talk to each other. Yeah,
because actually, it really does help the film. And since we've done stuff with all Alex's films, he's used Glenn again, and there is a weird thing that sound seems to still do, that bolted on at the end thing that music used to do. And so you still, there's no way around it. You still only ever hear everything coming together weirdly at the final mix. And we try to make that different. And I think if you guys are doing stuff on your own and you can make that, anytime you can make that different and you can hear what the sound designer's doing, especially when it's a part of the film where the two overlap, because it's the worst thing in the world. If you're doing music that's got a massive rumble in it because you've seen a thundercloud in the background, and then the sound designer's doing a massive rumble because
in a different key.
Yeah, and you've got two, or the sound designer's thinking, oh, it'd be nice to have this drone that goes through that. And anyway,
I mean, and also it's working out that we do it a lot. Very early on in films, we say to the sound designers, there's most probably scenes where they're kind of, like it was with Civil War. Yeah. Where you don't need music. I mean, we try and do as little music as possible because over music is just a horrible thing in films. But the idea that basically, like, you have there'll be a scene where it's just music and no sound design, and then just sound design and no music. And they're really, really powerful like that. Yeah. And because what happens is you're both fighting for the same thing. It's just can just be a mess. Yeah.